Welcome back. Find a comfortable position and let your body get heavy. Take a slow breath in and let it out. There's nothing you need to do right now. Know where you need to be. Tonight, I have 6 stories for you. Let them wash over you. You don't need to follow along closely. Just let the words carry you. Let's begin. The afternoon sun filtered through the leaves of my favorite oak tree, casting wavering shadows across the wooden porch where I had spent so many lazy afternoons. I could hear the gentle creak of the swing as it swayed in the warm breeze, rhythmic and soothing, like a lullaby softening the edges of the day. The air was infused with the subtle sweetness of blooming honeysuckle from the garden just below my window, mingling with the earthy scent of freshly cut grass, creating a perfect bouquet of summer. Around me, the neighborhood hummed with the tranquil sounds of life. In the distance, children laughed as they chased one another, their voices rising and falling like a gentle tide. The soft clink of metal and glass came from Mrs. Henderson's house across the street, where she was busy preparing lemonade for the thirsty kids. I could catch snippets of conversation drifting through open windows, the easy familiarity of neighbors sharing stories, their voices winding together like a warm embrace. As I took a sip of my own lemonade, a burst of tartness made my lips pucker, followed by a wave of sweetness. I settled into the swing, feeling the cool of the wood beneath me, and let my thoughts float back to the neighborhood barbecue planned for the weekend. It was an annual event, one that brought everyone together, but this year, a sense of unease wove through the excitement. Mrs. Henderson had mentioned it during one of our casual chats over the fence, her brow slightly furrowed as she spoke about the amount of food she had planned to prepare. She was renowned for her potato salad and homemade cookies, always the highlight of the gathering. But this year, a sudden illness meant she would be unable to cook. My heart ached a little for her, knowing how much she loved taking part in these small community celebrations. As I pondered this, I felt a gentle urge to help. After all, we were all connected in this tiny slice of the world, an assortment of families glued together by years of shared laughter, disputes over fences, and spontaneous moments of kindness. I thought about how the neighborhood came together for the little things, helping with yard work or watching each other's kids for an afternoon. It was what made this community special. Later that week, I decided to invite a few neighbors over for coffee. The sun had dipped low in the sky, painting everything in hues of orange and violet, as I brewed a pot of coffee that slowly filled the kitchen with its rich aroma. I set out mismatched mugs on the table, each one holding its own little story. Gifts from friends, scavenged from yard sales, and some passed down through generations. As the doorbell rang, my heart fluttered ever so slightly, a mix of excitement and nervousness. First to arrive was Ellie and her little daughter Sophie, whose bright red curls bounced excitedly as she entered. "Can I have a cookie?" she asked, her big brown eyes wide with anticipation. I laughed, reminding her that we hadn't even had coffee yet. Once everyone settled in, Mila from 2 doors down, who always had a story to share, and Tom, a retired carpenter, who enjoyed lending a hand with everyone's home improvements, a warm sense of community wrapped around us. We talked about the neighborhood barbecue, each one expressing their worries about how Mrs. Henderson would manage without her beloved potato salad. "What if we all helped?" suggested Tom, his brow creased in thought. "I mean, we could each take a dish, bring something to share. Make sure she has a chance to rest." "Now, mademoiselle." A murmur of agreement filled the room, a gentle hum of ideas weaving through us. We started to brainstorm. Mila could bake her famous cornbread, and Ellie would whip up her enticing pasta salad. I felt warmth swell in my chest at the thought of everyone coming together, each offering a piece of themselves for Mrs. Henderson, whose unyielding kindness towards us all had inspired this gathering. As plans emerged, we laughed and reminisced about past barbecues, the mishaps and the triumphs. I could almost hear the sizzling of burgers on the grill and see the faces lit up by the glow of fairy lights strung between trees. I could picture the very essence of our community, bound by laughter and the comfort of familiarity. When the sun finally dipped below the horizon, leaving the sky a deep indigo, I felt a gentle tiredness settle in as the laughter began to quiet. The air was still warm, but a cool breeze started to drift through the window, carrying with it the sweet, soothing scent of the honeysuckle. I watched as the shadows grew longer, a soft contentment rushing through me, knowing I was a part of something special. As the days progressed, I could feel the anticipation of our barbecue building within the neighborhood. Each family began to prepare their dishes with care, a visible excitement in the air whenever we crossed paths. I would see Mrs. Henderson in her yard, planting new flowers with a smile that turned into a short laugh whenever I shared a joke. She truly had no idea how much we were rallying around her. On the day of the barbecue, the sun rose with a golden glow, and I felt an undeniable buzz of energy surrounding me. I watched as everyone gathered in the park. Long tables decorated with brightly colored tablecloths were set up under the trees, swaying gently in the breeze. The scent of grilled meats filled the air, mingling with the sweetness of desserts that had been carried in from houses all around the neighborhood. I caught sight of Mrs. Z. Henderson at the edge of the crowd, her eyes bright and sparkling as she surveyed the gathering. It made my heart swell with joy. She was overwhelmed by the sight of everyone coming together, each of us bringing a taste of ourselves to the table, to share and enjoy. The way her brow softened, a smile breaking across her face, warmed me inside. As the afternoon unfolded, laughter echoed from every corner. Children ran like wildflowers in the wind, their giggles breaking free with each bound, while adults shared stories and poured lemonade into cups. I wandered among neighbors, taking bites of delicious food, pausing to savor each flavor. A rich blend of flavors representing our lives, our hearts stitched together. The sun began to set again, casting a warm glow across the park. And as we sat together around the tables, there was a delicious hush that enveloped the space. It was a moment when we all took a deep breath, realizing the strength of our little community. We were more than neighbors. We were a family woven together by simple acts of love and kindness. In that moment, as I leaned back in my chair, content and at peace, I noticed a single firefly flickering to life in the dusk, weaving among the trees with its gentle glow. Peace settled over me, wrapping me in a blanket of gratitude for the connections we shared. I could almost hear the soft whisper of joy echoing around me, reminding me that we had woven something special together, as if each thread of life was twinkling with warmth. Eventually, the evening drew to a close, and farewells were said with promises to meet again soon. I returned home, a sense of calm washing over me. As I settled into my favorite chair on the porch, the moon rose high, casting a silvery light across everything it touched. I inhaled deeply, savoring the lingering scent of honeysuckle and the blissful warmth of community. Tonight, I knew, would be filled with dreams of laughter, warmth, and a heart full of kindness as my eyelids grew heavier. I smiled softly, envisioning that little flickering firefly and the joy it brought in its fleeting dance. In the hushed stillness of the night, wrapped in the comfort of my home, I could rest easy knowing we were all just a little bit brighter together. Close your eyes and settle in for this one. The afternoon sunlight spilled through the kitchen window, casting a warm glow across the gleaming countertops. Dust motes danced lazily, caught in the light as I stood by the stove, stirring a pot of simmering tomato sauce. The rich, tangy aroma filled the air, mingling with the faint scent of basil from the small potted plant perched on the sill, its leaves vibrant and green. I could hear the gentle sizzle of garlic in the pan, the occasional pop of bubbles from the sauce, and the rhythmic ticking of the old clock on the wall. Each tick a small reminder that time, like the sauce, thickened and changed, but never stood still. It was a Saturday, a day that had lost the urgency of the work week and settled into a cozy routine. Outside, the birds chirped cheerfully, each note a soft echo of the warmth that enveloped the neighborhood. I glanced out the window to see the ever-familiar sight of Mrs. C. Thompson tending to her garden across the street, her sun hat perched jauntily atop her head as she carefully pruned her roses. The sight of her always made me smile. I loved how her flowers seemed to bloom just a little brighter in her tender care, much like the feeling of home that surrounded me in this moment. As I stirred the sauce, memories drifted through my mind. I thought of those summer days long ago when my friends and I would gather here, filling the kitchen with laughter, stories, and the aroma of whatever we managed to cook together. There was a lightness then, an unspoken promise that we would always be together, that life would take care of itself. But time, as it often does, had other plans. I couldn't help but let a small smile flicker on my lips as I recalled how we once tried to recreate a complicated recipe from a cooking show, only to end up with a splattered kitchen and a pizza that looked as if it had been through a gentle war. How quickly things changed. Melissa had moved to another city for a job that was too good to pass up, and Mark had followed his heart across the country, while I had remained rooted in this familiar place, piecing together the remnants of our shared moments. Each departure had left an imprint, a bittersweet mark on my heart. Yet here I was, standing over a pot of sauce, content in my solitude, discovering a different kind of peace amongst the memories. Just then the door creaked open, and in walked my cat, Oliver. He was a plump ball of fur, his golden eyes blinking up at me with a mix of curiosity and mild annoyance, as if to say, "What's taking so long?" I chuckled softly, knowing full well that if Oliver had his way, I'd be serving him a gourmet feast every hour. His tiny paws patted quietly across the floor, and he settled himself close to my feet, purring softly as he nestled in for a long stay. The rhythmic sound of his purr mingled with the simmering sauce, creating a serene melody that wrapped around me like a warm blanket. With the sauce nearly ready, I prepared the table for one, setting out a simple, mismatched assortment of plates and utensils, each piece carrying its own story from years past. I could have set a place for two, recalling times when laughter filled the air. But tonight, it felt right to honor this moment of solitude. Each clink of the dishes seemed to echo the past, a gentle reminder of those who'd gathered around this very table, their voices blending into the fabric of my memories. As I took a seat, I glanced at the empty chair across from me, its presence a poignant reminder of what had been lost. It was a chair that had once been filled with friends, laughter, and shared meals. I could almost hear their voices, teasing each other over small mistakes in the kitchen, or sharing plans for the future that seemed so bright and full of promise. But those bright futures had diverged, like pathways in a vast forest, carrying each of us in different directions. A small sigh escaped my lips as I lifted my fork, twirling a piece of pasta onto it. There was a sweetness in remembering, tinged with a touch of sorrow. I knew life was about letting go, about savoring the moments we had and allowing the space for new ones to grow. I could feel the warmth of gratitude washing over me as I took that first bite, the rich flavors grounding me in the here and now, each mouthful a reminder of the blessings that still remain. The world around me seemed to slow, the flavors unfolding with each taste, as if the sauce was whispering its own stories of the long hours it spent simmering, melding ingredients into something beautiful. I swirled the pasta on my fork once more, letting my mind wander freely. I pictured myself sitting at the table with my friends again, laughter cascading through the air like sunlight breaking through clouds. An image of us, slightly older but very much the same, surfaced. Each one of us still in touch, sharing stories of our lives, even if they look different now. As I finished my meal, I wandered over to the window, leaning against the cool glass. The sun had begun its descent, casting a golden hue across the street, the kind of light that softens edges and makes everything feel more serene. Mrs. Thompson was still out in her garden, but now her silhouette danced with the shadows that began to creep in, a reminder that even as the day ended, life continued to flow in a beautiful cycle of endings and beginnings. With a gentle smile, I grabbed my journal from the nearby table and settled into my favorite chair. the fabric worn soft by years of hugs and dreams. I loved how this space, filled with memories both happy and bittersweet, wrapped around me like a comforting embrace. I felt a stirring in my heart, a need to put pen to paper, to capture the essence of this moment, the blending of past and present, of love and loss, of letting go and holding on. The first word came slowly, followed by another, unhurried thought spilling onto the page. As I wrote, the rhythmic ticking of the clock faded into the background, blending seamlessly with the quiet purring of Oliver at my feet. I lost track of time, lost in the act of creating, of capturing that gentle ebb and flow of life. Each thought soothed my heart, as if the pages themselves were absorbing the weight I held within me, transforming it into something lighter, something more hopeful. As I wrote, I could hear the gentle evening chorus of crickets outside, their song carrying whispers of the day's joy and sadness. I paused, letting the quiet wash over me, allowing the comforting rhythm of nature to lull my thoughts into a serene stillness. In that moment, I realized that letting go didn't mean erasing the past. It meant honoring it, cherishing it, while making space for new memories to blossom. Finishing my last sentence, I set down my pen and leaned back, gazing at the ceiling, which seemed to absorb the last golden rays of light. The world outside had transformed into a peaceful twilight, a gentle reminder that even as the day turned to night, life continued its gentle dance. I could feel a profound stillness settle within me, a quiet understanding that it was okay to feel both the weight of my memories and the lightness of new beginnings. As I rose, I turned off the kitchen lights, the soft click echoing in the quiet room, and slipped under a cozy blanket on the couch. Oliver joined me, curling up tightly against my side, our warmth mingling as the world outside grew darker. With the soft glow of a single lamp lighting the room, I let my eyes lower, surrendering to the peacefulness settling over me. In the hush of that moment, I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, feeling the weight of gratitude settling on my chest. I was home, and even in this stillness, I could sense the beauty of what life had offered me, both in laughter and in letting go. Here's another story to drift off to. The morning light filtered softly through the kitchen window, casting warm patterns on the worn wood table. I stood with my back to the window, the gentle hum of the refrigerator filling the space, blending with the soft bubbling of water coming to a boil on the stovetop. The familiar scent of caramelizing onions wrapped around me, making me feel at home, as if the kitchen itself was giving me a warm hug. I moved to the counter and grabbed a chipped coffee mug, the kind with little memories etched into the glaze. The time I spilled paint on one during an art class, the tiny nicks from an enthusiastic dish scrub. Outside, the world felt alive. A bird flitted onto the porch railing, its cheerful chirps weaving through the air. And I could hear the distant laughter of children playing somewhere down the street. I took a moment to savor the stillness, the quiet sanctuary of the morning, before pouring the hot water over the tea leaves, watching the steam rise and swirl like a gentle dancer. I inhaled deeply, filling my lungs with the fragrant warmth that wrapped around me like a soft blanket. As I lifted the mug to my lips, the warmth of the tea seeped into my hands, grounding me further in the moment. I loved these early mornings before work, when the world was yet to wake entirely, and my mind could wander freely, unburdened. I took a sip, careful not to burn my tongue, and a small smile tugged at the corners of my mouth as I recalled all the mornings spent in this very kitchen. Soon enough, I stood at the door, ready to leave for the office. The drive into town was familiar, with its winding roads and the gentle sway of trees lining either side. I loved this part of the day when the sun began to break free, casting soft golds and oranges into the sky. Each stoplight was a brief pause, a moment for reflection as I watched the clouds drift lazily overhead. Arriving at the office, the atmosphere felt cozy. The building was old but welcoming, with a hint of floral air freshener mingling with the scent of freshly printed paper. The chatter of my coworkers greeted me, filling the hallways as I walked towards my desk. I passed by Jenny from accounting, who was already immersed in her work, her brow furrowed in concentration. She looked up and flashed me a smile. A small moment, reminding me how these everyday exchanges stitched together the fabric of our workday lives. Settling into my desk, I glanced at my calendar for the day, mildly surprised to see a reminder about the team meeting later that morning. We were supposed to discuss progress on our latest project, which had been gently nudging its way through various stages of development. I felt a small flutter of anticipation in my stomach. It was always interesting to hear the diverse perspectives from my team. As the morning rolled on, I found myself engrossed in my tasks, moving from one deliverable to the next. The familiar rhythm of typing and clicking brought a comforting lull, and I paused occasionally to look out the window, watching as the sun climbed higher, casting playful shadows across the office floor. The soft ping of an incoming message snapped me back to reality. It was a chat from Mark, my colleague from marketing, asking if I had a moment to discuss the project. I nodded to myself, even though he couldn't see me, recalling the last time we'd talked about the project. There had been a slight misunderstanding, a gentle clash of ideas that had left us both feeling a little awkward. It was so easy for that kind of tension to seep into conversations if we weren't careful. When I stepped into the conference room, the air felt different. The sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the space and making it feel lighter, as if it could wash away any lingering worries. Mark was already there, a stack of papers in front of him, his brow slightly furrowed, which made me chuckle a bit. He always seemed to wear expression like a work of art, somehow complex yet relatable. "Hey," I said, softening my tone. "What's on your mind?" He looked up, and for a brief moment, uncertainty flickered in his eyes before he smiled back. "I just wanted to go over a few details about the campaign before the meeting." As we spoke, I noticed how his hands animated the conversation, fingers dancing lightly over the table, and I felt the tension of our last discussion begin to fade. We exchanged ideas, opinions, and laughter, surprisingly finding common ground where previously there had been hesitation. But as we worked through the details, I sensed a slight unease beneath his enthusiasm. It was strange to feel this warmth between us, yet still see a flicker of stress in his gaze. He seemed caught between excitement and worry, and I wondered if perhaps he felt the weight of expectations too heavily. "Everything okay?" I asked, the question slipping out easily, a genuine concern. Mark hesitated, chewing on his lower lip ever so slightly. "I just want this to go well, you know? It's a big deal for the team. Now, anyway." I nodded, understanding that pressure all too well. "I feel you. It's important, but we're doing our best. And we're in this together." His expression softened, and I could see a hint of relief wash over him. The conversation rolled on gently, like a river finding its way through smooth stones, each idea flowing seamlessly into the next. The atmosphere in the room became lighter, the earlier tension dissipating like morning mist, and I felt grateful for this connection, this shared moment where we could just be ourselves. Before we knew it, the meeting was upon us, and we moved into the main conference room together, resuming our friendly banter. As our team gathered around, the warmth of collaboration filled the air, igniting a spark of creativity that floated above us like a comforting cloud. When we finally wrapped up, a sense of accomplishment clipped the edges of our conversations. Everyone seemed pleased with the ideas that we had pieced together, their laughter and gentle teasing creating a backdrop of camaraderie that filled the space. I felt a great swell of gratitude for my coworkers, these small moments that made the workday so much more than just tasks and meetings. As I walked back to my desk, the sunlight poured through the window, glistening across the surfaces, like a gentle reminder that everything was all right. It was in moments like this I realized, simple, unhurried, and infused with kindness, that we found our togetherness, the heart of our small community within these office walls. The rest of the afternoon slipped away gently, each hour woven into the next as we moved through our projects with ease. I could feel the energy shift towards a calm end of the workday, and with each passing minute I felt the day draw to a close, each moment anchored in the beauty of shared experiences. As I clocked out and stepped into the parking lot, the sun had begun its descent, casting long shadows on the pavement. I breathed in deeply, feeling the warm air wrap around me, and smiled at the thought of returning to that familiar kitchen, to brew another cup of tea and reflect on the day with a grateful heart. When I finally arrived home, I found solace in the quietness. The kitchen felt inviting, the light softening as the day drifted into dusk. I settled back at the table, my cup of steaming tea warming my hands, and listened to the comforting sounds of life outside. The gentle rustle of leaves in the evening breeze, the distant chatter of neighbors enjoying their own end of day. Rituals. I looked out of the window, my heart full and light, as I embraced the stillness around me. There was something profoundly lovely about these moments, the simplicity of connection, the sense that in our small ways, we were all doing just fine. I took a sip of my tea, setting the mug down softly, and let out a long, contented sigh. My soul at peace as I welcomed the soft embrace of the evening. Finally, as I pulled the blanket tightly around my shoulders and reached to turn off the lamp, I felt the gentle weight of gratitude settle comfortably over me as I closed my eyes and surrendered to the quiet of the night. Let yourself relax as we begin the next story. I remember a bright Saturday morning, the kind where the sun seems to linger extra long on the windowsills, and the world feels just a little softer. I found myself wrapped in an old, worn robe, slowly making my way through the familiar scent of brewing coffee that wafted from my small kitchen. The warmth of the sunlight danced across the countertops, illuminating the dust motes floating lazily in the air. I could hear the gentle chirping of birds outside, punctuating the stillness with their cheerful melodies as they welcomed the day. The kitchen table, a sturdy oak piece with a few nicks and grooves from years of use, stood patiently in the corner. I had always loved that table. It felt like a friend who had shared many breakfasts and late-night conversations with me. I took a moment to run my fingers over its surface, feeling the smoothness of the varnish, remembering how it had been there through all the ups and downs of my life. I poured myself a cup of that dark, steaming coffee, the rich aroma enveloping me like a warm hug. The first sip was always the best. It was hot, and I could barely keep the liquid in my mouth for long enough to savor its depth before I felt a small sting on my tongue. I chuckled softly at my impatience, the little piece of myself that insisted on rushing even the smallest pleasures. It was during those quiet mornings that I often found myself reflecting. I had been wrestling with a difficult decision recently, one that kept circling in my mind like the soft clouds drifting outside my window. I had made the choice to leave my job at the small bookshop I had cherished for years. It wasn't an easy choice. The shop had been like a second home to me, filled with the scent of aged paper and soft whispers of countless stories. Still, I felt a pull to explore something new, a whisper of adventure that wouldn't let go. As I settled into my favorite chair, an old armchair stuffed just enough to feel like being hugged, I gazed out of the window. The sky was a brilliant blue, dotted with fluffy white clouds that floated lazily, as if taking their time to reach their destination. I sipped my coffee and let my mind drift back to the faces of my coworkers, Nora with her infectious laughter, or Ben, who loved to share trivia about every book on the shelf. Those moments were filled with warmth, and I would miss them deeply. Yet, there was a sense of excitement bubbling just beneath the surface as well. I had applied for a position with a local nonprofit focused on community outreach, something I had always wanted to do, but never had the courage to pursue until now. The echoes of my decision lingered in the air like the last notes of a beautiful song. I felt the heaviness settle slightly in my chest, the pang of leaving behind those cherished moments. But alongside it, there was a flutter of hope, like the first bloom of spring pushing through the frost. I let that feeling wrap around me, warming the corners of my mind that were still anxious and uncertain. Later that day, I walked through the town for what felt like the 100th time. The sun danced through the leaves of the old oak trees lining the main street, casting playful shadows on the pavement. I watched as families strolled by, children laughing with ice cream smudged on their faces, their joy infectious. I smiled at their delight, at the way life kept unfolding in its own gentle rhythm. While I was struggling to let go of the past, everyone else was wrapped up in their own stories, weaving new threads into the tapestry of their lives. As the afternoon deepened, I found myself wandering into a small park nestled between rows of brick buildings. There, the sound of children's laughter merged with the gentle rustle of leaves overhead. A small wooden bench caught my eye, slightly sunken in the middle, as if it had cradled countless moments of contemplation, joy, and sometimes even sorrow. I took a seat, letting the warmth of the sun wash over me, feeling the slight breeze carrying the scents of freshly cut grass and blooming flowers. In that serene little corner, I noticed a small group of daisies dancing on the breeze. They were so simple, yet their beauty felt poignant. It struck me how often I had overlooked the everyday signs of life around me, focusing instead on my worries about the future and the past. I felt a soft smile forming on my lips as I watched those daisies sway and flutter, each petal catching the sunlight in a different way. Perhaps, I thought, I could let go a little. I could be like those daisies, resilient and ready to embrace whatever came next. Time felt suspended, as if the world beyond that park shed its urgency. I sat for a long while, letting my thoughts drift gently, savoring the way the breeze cooled my skin and the soft sounds of the park enveloped me. A small child stumbled near me, giggling as he chased after a butterfly, completely captivated by the chase. I chuckled quietly to myself, remembering my own carefree days in playgrounds, the excitement of simple things unfurling like the petals of those daisies. With each passing moment, I felt lighter, as if I were shedding a layer of worry that I had carried for far too long. I began to understand that the decision I made didn't define me. It was simply part of the journey. I could hold the memories of the bookshop close to my heart, while also allowing new experiences to unfold. With that thought nestled gently in my mind, a wave of calm washed over me. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in soft hues of pink and lavender, I knew I had embraced my choice with grace. There would be new stories to write, new friendships to forge, and new adventures to experience. I felt the gentle hum of anticipation mingling with the familiar flickers of nostalgia. My heart swayed between the two, cradling both the past and future as if they were old friends uniting for a moment in time. Eventually, I rose from that bench, the soft creak of wood beneath me, a gentle reminder of the countless stories it had witnessed. I took a slow walk back home, the streets now glowing of the soft embrace of streetlights flickering on one by one. Every step felt deliberate, each one marking my quiet acceptance of change and the promise that lay ahead. When I returned to my kitchen, the air was still warm with the lingering scent of coffee, though now, even that familiar aroma felt renewed, a symbol of the opportunity for new beginnings. I wrapped myself in my robe once again, pouring another cup, its steam curling lazily upwards, dancing in the stillness. I allowed the cup to rest in my hands, feeling its warmth seep into my skin. As I sipped, I closed my eyes for a moment, reveling in the quiet comfort of my home, my thoughts slowing to a gentle rhythm that echoed the beating of my heart. This moment, with its simplicity and clarity, filled me with gratitude. I felt the evening calm settling in, a soft hush falling over the world outside. As I prepared to end the day, I caught a glimpse of the settling dusk through my window. The colors deepened into a peaceful navy, the first stars beginning to twinkle above like tiny beacons of light. I exhaled slowly, allowing my breath to draw me deeper into the stillness of the evening, feeling the weight of my decision now softening, the pulse of possibilities unfolding ahead of me. With one last look at the peaceful night sky, I turned off the lamp beside me, plunging the room into comforting dimness. The world felt profoundly peaceful, and I was right where I needed to be. Just me, my warm cup, and the quiet hum of home, inviting me into the embrace of dreams where tomorrow awaited. Let yourself relax as we begin the next story. The rain fell softly against the window, a gentle, rhythmic tapping that seemed to sigh along with me as I settled into the small, cozy room of my favorite cafe. I could smell the warm, inviting aroma of freshly ground coffee mingling with sweet pastries just out of the oven. The air was rich with a buttery scent, and I could feel the comfortable embrace of the overstuffed chair I sank into, the fabric soft and worn from countless afternoons spent cradled in its embrace. Outside, the world was draped in a blanket of gray, vibrant colors dulled under the muted sky. It was the sort of day that beckoned you to linger, to sip slowly and savor the little moments that drifted by like clouds in the distance. I ordered my usual, a cappuccino, its foamy top artfully dusted with cocoa powder, and settled in with a book I'd been meaning to read for a while. The soft murmur of conversation swirled around me, punctuated occasionally by the low hum of the espresso machine and the delicate clink of spoon against ceramic. As I turned the pages, I noticed a few familiar faces, a couple sharing a slice of cranberry scone, their laughter wrapping around them like a warm scarf, a woman in the corner knitting, her needles clicking quietly, creating rhythm like a heartbeat. I could hear snippets of their lives, the small joys and gentle worries drifting through the air, weaving into the cozy atmosphere. Moments passed, and I found myself lost in the world of my book, the characters unfolding like petals of a blooming flower. But somewhere in the back of my mind, I felt the soft weight of the rain outside, lulling me into a comfortable haze. It was in this peaceful reverie that I noticed him, an older gentleman sitting a few tables away. His gray hair was tousled, and he wore a well-loved wool sweater that looked like it had seen many winters. He had a newspaper folded in his hands, but his eyes wandered, glancing around the cafe with a soft curiosity. Every so often he would catch my gaze and offer a small, shy smile, which I returned, feeling an unexpected warmth spread through me. There was something gentle in his presence, an air of quiet contentment, as if he had spent a lifetime finding beauty in ordinary moments. I watched as he took a deliberate sip from his coffee, pauses lingering longer than necessary, as though he were savoring each drop, committing the warmth to memory. I returned to my book, but my thoughts began to wander. It was one of those days when you reflect on kindness, those moments that lift you when you least expect them. I remembered a time not too long ago when a stranger had held the door for me as I hurried to catch a train, or the woman who had smiled at me in the grocery store when I dropped my wallet. The way she reached down to help, her laughter, brightening what felt like an embarrassing moment. I felt a softness in my heart, a reminder that connection could be found in the simplest of acts. I looked up again, instinctively seeking the old man across the room. He had turned his attention back to the newspaper, but seemed lost in thought. Just then, a gentle voice interrupted my reverie. "Excuse me," a young woman had approached his table, her hair tucked neatly beneath a knitted cap, the kind that seemed to radiate warmth. "Do you mind if I share this table? It seems quite busy today." "Nein." "Of course not," he replied, a genuine kindness in his voice that matched the peacefulness of his smile. As she settled in across from him, I noticed the little sparks of connection igniting between them. They exchanged the briefest of pleasantries, and I could see her eyes light up as she spoke, a flicker of curiosity in her gaze. I couldn't catch their exact words, but there was a warmth in their exchange that enveloped the air, a small bubble of shared space amidst the bustling cafe. The woman pulled out a notebook, and as she flipped open the pages, I saw sketches scatter across the surface. Simple lines that captured fleeting moments, the curvature of laughter, the softness of a quiet corner. The old man leaned in, intrigued, and they began to share a quiet conversation, laughter spilling softly from their table like the steam rising from my cappuccino. There was an easy comfort in their interaction that made my heart swell, as if they had known each other for a long time, though only a few moments had passed. I turned back to my book, yet the smiles and laughter from their corner tugged at my thoughts, wrapping around my heart like a gentle embrace. The atmosphere of kindness radiated throughout the room, touching each corner, a soft warmth radiating from that small table. I couldn't help but sneak glances, watching as their conversation flowed effortlessly, punctuated by bursts of laughter. Time felt suspended, and the rain continued to fall steadily outside. The rhythmic sound became a soothing background score to the unfolding scene. I imagined the myriad of stories these two people might share, how every life held its own little tale waiting to be told. Then I noticed something unexpected. The young woman reached into her bag, pulling out the very pastry I had been eyeing earlier, the luscious cranberry scone, lightly dusted with sugar. She turned to the old man, an invitation glimmering in her eyes. "Would you like to try a piece? It's delightful." Nani. For a brief moment his eyes widened in surprise, and then he laughed softly. The kind of laugh that makes you feel like you've just heard the sun break through the clouds. "Oh, I couldn't possibly." "That looks delicious," he said, glancing at the scone, which seemed to shimmer under the cafe lights. "Just a little, then," she insisted, breaking off a small piece and offering it to him. I held my breath, watching as he took the morsel, his eyes lighting up at the unexpected sweetness of the gesture, a soft gratitude unfolding in their shared space. Their interaction continued with quiet kindness, the ease between them bridging the years that separated their lives. I could tell that both the woman and the man were enjoying this moment of connection, a rare occurrence in a world that often rushed past unnoticed. The cafe felt like a sanctuary, each moment stretching into the next, a reminder that kindness could be a gentle thread, weaving strangers together, even if just for an afternoon. As I sipped my own drink, I felt the edges of my consciousness begin to blur. The warmth of the cappuccino settled comfortably in my stomach, grounding me in the moment. The rhythm of the rain outside became a gentle lullaby, stitching together the sound of laughter and quiet conversation. In that little bubble of time, I noticed the thrill of life, the way small moments could ripple outwards, shifting and shaping the world around us. The sun, I imagined, must have been hidden behind the clouds, although it was hard to tell now as the light faded into the evening. I could feel my eyelids growing heavier, each breath pulling me deeper into a serene state. I allowed my thoughts to drift, floating like leaves on a gentle river, the warmth of shared kindness wrapping around me like a soft blanket. The young woman and the old man continued to exchange smiles, the air heavy with goodwill, reinforcing the comfort of the familiar. Their laughter lingered, creating a thread of connection that seemed to swirl around the whole cafe, reminding me of the warmth of humanity that could be discovered in unexpected ways. And as the rain softly patted against the window, I let my thoughts drift away, lulled by the gentle rhythm of their conversation and the warmth of my surroundings. Time slipped away, the world outside continuing to blur as I surrendered to the soft embrace of sleep. The last image I held on to was the sound of laughter bubbling gently in the air, the peace that wrapped around me like the softest of quilt, and the kind faces sharing a small, beautiful moment. I closed my eyes, comforted by the knowledge that kindness, in its simplest form, could light up the world, even on the cloudiest of days. Let yourself relax as we begin the next story. The air was thick with the soft aroma of freshly baked bread, warm and inviting, filling the little kitchen where I often found solace in the early morning hours. Sunlight streamed through the window, spilling golden pools onto the worn wooden table, and the gentle hum of the outside world began to stir. Birds chirped faintly in the distance, their songs mingling with the comforting tick-tock of the old clock that hung on the wall, its hands moving deliberately, as if savoring each moment. I watched the dough rising in the bowl, its soft surface gleaming with a light dusting of flour. It had been a Saturday ritual for me, mixing the ingredients in the quiet of dawn, when the world was still wrapped in a sleepy embrace. As I kneaded the dough, my fingers sank into the cool, elastic mass, and I felt a sense of connection, not just to the bread itself, but to the space around me. The kitchen was filled with memories of laughter and quiet conversations, candlelit dinners, and a small collection of mismatched mugs that always seemed to hold more than just coffee. The sun climbed higher, casting shadows that danced across the floor, and soon I heard the soft creak of the front door opening. It was Mia, my neighbor who had moved in a few months prior. We had exchanged the usual pleasantries, but that was about as far as it went. Our interactions felt like stepping stones across a quiet pond, timid yet deliberate. I found comfort in her gentle presence, the way her eyes sparkled with curiosity, as if she were discovering the world anew. She wore an oversized sweater that day, its sleeves hanging beyond her fingertips, and her hair was gathered loosely in a bun, a few strands escaping to frame her face. "Hey," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, as she stepped into the kitchen. I couldn't help but notice how the light seemed to soften around her, enveloping her in a cocoon of warmth. "I thought I'd come by to see how you were doing." I smiled, a little shyly, and gestured toward the bowl of dough. "Just trying to make some bread. Want to help?" "No." Her eyes lit up. "I've never made bread before, but I'd love to try." The two of us side by side felt like a small miracle in the cozy kitchen. The dough felt malleable and alive beneath our combined hands, the rhythm of our movements falling into sync as we mixed and folded and shaped. Our laughter floated lightly in the air, a gentle note against the backdrop of the world outside, where time drifted lazily like the clouds, allowing us to be fully present in our little bubble of shared experience. As we worked, I noticed the way Maya's brow furrowed slightly in concentration, her tongue peeking out just a bit when she was deep in thought. I chuckled under my breath, grateful for moments like this where the world felt simple and uncomplicated. I shared with her my favorite things about baking, how it was a blend of art and science, how the magic seemed to happen when ingredients that had once been separate came together to create something entirely new. She listened, a soft smile playing on her lips, as we moved seamlessly between conversation and quiet contemplation. The dough eventually needed to rest, and we set it aside in a warm corner of the kitchen where it could rise. I offered her a cup of tea, and we settled into the comfort of mismatched chairs at the small table. The steam curled from our mugs, filling the space with the comforting scent of chamomile and honey that wrapped around us like a gentle hug. "Do you always bake on the weekends?" she asked, cradling her mug with both hands, a hint of curiosity in her eyes. "Mostly. It's a way for me to unwind, I suppose. Something about kneading dough feels therapeutic. I get lost in the rhythm of it," I replied, watching her face as she took a sip. "I can see that," she said thoughtfully. "I think I might need to adopt a weekend ritual like that." We fell into an easy silence then, one that felt familiar, despite it being so new. I stole glances at her, noticing how the sunlight caught the golden strands in her hair and how her eyes sparkled like stars when she was deep in thought. I liked these quiet moments, the way they allowed for unspoken connections to bloom. After a few minutes, Mia spoke again, her voice soft. "You know, I've always found it hard to connect with people. It's like everyone is always rushing around, and I just want to find someone who understands the beauty in stillness." No. Her words sat between us, a tender confession. I nodded, feeling the warmth of our shared understanding filling the space around us. "I get that. Sometimes it feels like the quieter moments are the ones that hold the most meaning." We both sighed, as if releasing the weight of unvoiced thoughts. The minutes passed slowly, marked by the gentle ticking of the clock, the soft rustle of the trees outside, and the steam rising from our cups. It was a peaceful lull, a moment where time seemed less important than the connection forming between us. After a bit, we returned to the dough, dusting our hands with flour and chatting about our favorite books, the ones that had shaped our worlds. Mia had a particular fondness for tales of adventure, the sort that whisked you away to other lands, while I shared my love for stories steeped in quiet introspection, where characters often paused to reflect on their lives. There was something soothing about our exchange, as if each sentence was a stepping stone nudging us closer into the uncharted territory of friendship. The dough had risen beautifully, and we began to shape it into loaves, the texture silky and inviting beneath our fingers. We laughed as we tried to mimic the intricate braiding techniques from a recipe I had found. Our attempts somewhat clumsy, but filled with joy. As the bread baked in the oven, the kitchen filled with rich, warm scents, a blend of yeast and sweetness that wrapped us in a cozy embrace. The sun had begun its slow descent, casting a golden glow that deepened the shadows in the corners of the room. "I love how the kitchen feels in the evening," I said, leaning against the counter as I watched the bread through the oven door, the crust slowly turning a perfect golden brown, especially when the light fades and the world outside begins to hush. "Me too," Mia replied, her voice softening. "I feel like it's one of the few spaces where everything seems to pause. Like you can just breathe for a moment." "Nay. Our eyes met, and there it was again, the unspoken connection that seemed to dance like the flickering candlelight on the table beside us. In that fading light, something shifted, settling comfortably between us, a recognition that perhaps we were two quiet souls finding our place in the world together. Once the loaves were finally done, we pulled them from the oven, the steam escaping in soft puffs and curling into the air. The golden crust crackled lightly as I tapped it, and the warmth was almost overwhelming. "This is the best part," I said, slicing into the warm bread. "The first bite, while it's still warm." Mia's eyes widened in delight, and we each took a piece, the warm dough crumbling softly in our hands. As we savored the taste, the world outside faded, the warmth of the kitchen wrapping around us like a long-lost friend. "Thank you for sharing this with me," she said, her voice a gentle melody that lingered in the air. "And realize how nice it would be to share a quiet moment like this. It feels good, doesn't it?" I replied, my heart swelling in the cozy atmosphere we had created together. As we continued to eat, our conversations drifted into stories of childhood memories, small moments of joy that felt stitched into our beings. Each story shared drew us closer, laced with laughter that felt light and free, echoing softly within the walls of my kitchen. Eventually, the sun dipped below the horizon, leaving a comforting twilight glow that wrapped around us. The clock ticked softly in the background, a gentle reminder of time passing, each moment cherished like a favorite book. With the kitchen quiet, save for our soft voices, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. It was the kind of tranquility that comes from simplicity, of being in the presence of someone who seemed to understand the beauty in the stillness. Eventually, the evening waned and the shadows deepened. Mia gathered her things, a content smile on her face as she stood by the door. "Thank you again for today. I, I really enjoyed it. I hope we can do this again." "No, and absolutely," I replied, warmth blooming in my chest. "I'd love that." As she stepped outside, the cool evening air greeted her, and I watched her walk away, the soft hush of the world falling around her like a comforting blanket. I felt a gentle hope unfurling within me, an acknowledgement that perhaps we were weaving a bond of quiet connection, one that could grow slowly, gently, like the dough we had kneaded earlier. I closed the door softly, the kitchen still warm and inviting, filled with the remnants of laughter and bread. As I cleaned up the space, I glanced out of the window, the stars beginning to twinkle in the vast navy sky, feeling grateful for the simple joy of that day. And as I settled down for the night, the stillness wrapping around me like the softest of quilts, I realized that sometimes the quietest moments hold the most beauty, a gentle reminder that connection is ever so quietly brewing just beneath the surface, waiting to rise. And that's the last story for tonight. You've traveled a long way to get here. Through 6 quiet worlds, 6 small lives, 6 gentle resolutions. Your breathing is slower now. Your body is heavy and warm. There's nothing left to think about. Just the quiet. Just the dark. Just rest. Good night.